Hello, everyone. My name is Leon Geyer. Today I'm going to talk to you about my family story and specifically about my grandmother, uh, whose name is Esther Resnick. Later it became Esther Pintel. And I'm going to talk to you about her story, specifically the story of her family during the Holocaust. I represent the organization called 3GNY. It's an organization of grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. So basically what we do is we go to schools and talk to kids there, trying to answer questions and tell about our family's story. So let me start by telling you about my grandma. First, I'll start by telling you where she comes from. And she comes from the same place I came from, Ukraine, a country in Eastern Europe, where there were lots of Jews living before the war, World War II. And let me show you specifically where I am from. This is Ukraine, and I am from Odessa. This is a pretty big city on the coast of Black Sea. And my grandma comes from another town. It still exists. It's called Krasnostav. And before 1941, there were about 1,200 Jews living there and 1,200 non-Jews that lived there. Here's my mother's family. The picture is taken in about 1913. And you could see her parents here. This is her aunt with her daughter and two of her siblings. She was not born yet at the time. It's a very nice looking picture showing you a traditional family, a religious family, as most families were at the time. And here you could see this child, and he's actually the only person in this picture who survived the Holocaust. The rest were killed later in 1941. But meanwhile, I'll tell you a little bit about my grandmother, Esther, or Fira Resnick. Here she is. She was born in 1922, at the end of 1922. So here she is, probably about 6 years old or something, with her brothers Ben Zion and Ezra. And I would like to tell you a little bit about the town where she lived and about how people treated each other there. So it was a pretty happy life for the most part, for the kids at least. Although, of course, there were difficult times too. There was famine in Ukraine, so people were starving. So there was a communist government that took away some property from people. But for kids, kids remember nice episodes of their life. And in 2015, so about 5 years ago, I and other descendants of people from Krasnostav, we went to this town, to Krasnostav, and talked to some local residents. There are about 300 people living there. So before the war, there were more than 2,000, now about 300. But there are still some old people who were children at the time and who remember what happened. Now they're going to talk about their life. An old woman is going to talk about her life and the relationship between Jewish and non-Jewish people.
Євреїв багато було? Все місто євреїв?
Це місто євреїв.
То єврейське містечко таке було, так?
Місто. Елка, Ханця. Це були дуже знайомі євреї, дуже знайомі були. Нахама дуже гарно шила.
Вона шила?
Шила дуже гарно. Це була сама краща модістка в селі.
Донька була Малка.
Малка була, у Мушера теж Малка була.
У Мушера сігала.
Я знаю. Мушер, то це був батьків товариша.
Батьків товариш був?
Так. І завжди, то якесь свято їхнє, то вони завжди приносять нам все ті гамани, і маца, і все це власне.
Мацу
Їла. Завжди, а як вже наше свято, то батько несе туди.
Горілки трошки, самогонки.
Все так, як треба.
So here it is, the memories of the person who grew up in the town. And so my grandmother grew up alongside. And here she is in the 1940s. Pretty much when she moved from the town, she moved to live with her brother, and he lived not so far in the town called Ovruch, and she lived there for about a year. And the war started on June 22nd, 1941, and she understood that it's dangerous to stay there, because as you can see, it's not that far from the border, and the German troops were moving pretty fast. So she decided to leave and wanted her brother to go with her, but the brother didn't want to go. She didn't know where she was living, so she went all alone. She just got on a train, and the train took her somewhere. It was a very long journey, as you could see here. This is Ukraine, and this is Russia. You could see how big Russia is. And on this map, it might not seem to you that it was too long, but this is a journey that lasted perhaps a few weeks, and it was over 1,000 miles long. And at the age of 19, not even 19 yet, she ended up in this little village. And here what she looked like at the time in the 1940s. For some period of time, she was the only Jewish person there. And she worked in collective farm, so it was like a farmland, and then she became actually the head of this farm. So she actually managed the village more or less, because she was educated. I guess all men left for the war, and so I guess they decided that she was the best candidate to manage the village, and that's what she did for a few years. And here she is with some other Jewish evacuees or refugees that lived there. And at some point, the war was coming to an end. She found out that her family was killed, whole family, and she had no place to go, so she went with these people who lived in Odessa, the town that I showed to you in the beginning, and she went with them. And this woman, and she lived with them for a while. This woman is actually my grandfather's sister, so that's her daughter. So that's how she met my grandfather when she went to live with these people in Odessa. And she married him next year in 1946. So I would like to show you a letter that talks about how her family was killed. And it was written by a Ukrainian woman who lived in the village. After my grandmother and her brother, they wrote there and asked what happened. So she wrote about it. And I'm going to read you part of her letter. So I'm writing to you all the details for the second time, and maybe even more times than that. It was a sad picture, but I can't hide the truth. Then she omits the date, but it was on August 29th, 1941. When German bandits occupied our town, they rode into the town in their cars. It was 5 in the morning. They surrounded the village and didn't let anyone in or out. They came into every house where Jews lived, forced people out, beat them, and at gunpoint led the whole family with little children into our club, where they locked them. At that time, a German came into your house and took your wife, Bluma. So this letter was written to my grandma's brother. So the German came into your house and took your wife, Bluma, and your child, and your mother-in-law, Estra, brought them into the club and locked them up with the other Jewish families. But your father-in-law, Benja, was hiding at the time, so the German didn't find him. Your parents and sister were also taken away and marched to the Gutansky forest. It's in Krasukov, where all of them were killed and buried at the same pit. Your relatives are there, and after everyone had been marched to the forest, your father-in-law Benja went out of the house, sat down next to it, and cried. At that time, Dennis was passing by with his rifle. Dennis is a local villager who became a policeman for the Germans. So he took your father-in-law and someone else, brought them to the Jewish cemetery and shot them by himself. Such is the fate of your relatives. Now I'll write how they punished this cursed bandit Dennis, so this policeman who killed some people there. When our troops came on January 13, 1944, he was arrested, tortured a bit, and then tried by a field military tribunal in our village. They asked him at the trial, "How many Jews have you killed?" And he answered, "However many I killed, if you give me a rifle right now, I'll kill as many." He was sentenced to death by hanging and was hanged in the center of the village by the podium where he was hanging for 5 days. And then this woman writes what happened to my grandmother's brother house, that somebody's living in there, but she invites him to come to the village. So when we went to Ukraine, we actually visited the place where they were killed, and I would like to show you a little clip from that film. Just so you know. Okay.
А вот оно место, вот так оно и есть. Запросила, бачите?
Надо человека.
Покосили, прибрали, ну взяти так.
Здесь будет цицка. Почему тут здесь написано 30-го?
Я не скажу почему.
Может, начали 30-го, закончили 31-го. За один день может...
Вообще, в принципе, то, что у меня видели.
За один день, наверное, 700 человек тяжело убить.
Не всех колонн.
За один день.
Всех одних увели.
Может, пару дней стреляли?
Нет. Вот все говорят, что один день.
За один день.
Ну, всех,
И это такая большая яма.
все село, ну то смотрите, что делать.
Это на идиш. Я не понимаю идиш. Я только на иврите знаю.
Прочтем.
Нефашот, это души.
Хорошо видно надпись, тут гарно написано.
Вот здесь, в этом месте была яма. Они ее вырыли, здесь яму.
Это же наши.
Сколько человек?
Это вот большое,
Значит, там написано, я не вижу, сколько, вообще, по-моему, 787, здесь 700 с чем-то человек.
785. 785, то есть, а вообще-то с этой деревни расстреляно 950 человек. То есть вся деревня расстреляна была.
В основном их не расстреливали, как мы знаем, вот в других местах их заживо. То есть, если стреляли, только чтобы они падали и засыпали, как в Бабьяр.
Ну, на самом деле мы не знаем.
Мы не знаем, как это делали, но...
Видите, я вам говорил, в Славуте грудных детей бросили в колодец. Чтобы не вести, не возиться с ними там при расстреле, то их просто бросили в колодец. Живыми бросили в колодец. Так что никакого ни по полу, ни по, так сказать, по возрасту никаких.
So here it is, pretty sad picture. And generally, I would like to tell you that it's a very common story in Ukraine and Belarus and parts of Russia that Germans occupied. So it's different from the stories that you might know from, let's say, Poland or Romania, Hungary, where people were first living in ghettos, special Jewish neighborhoods, and then they were sent to concentration camps. Here it was much shorter, basically. There were ghettos in some places, but in many places, people were just shot pretty soon after Germans came in. So about a million people, over a million people were killed, just shot or thrown alive into pits or killed in some other ways. But that happened within a year, basically, 1942. Already at the end of by the end of 1942, there were almost no Jews left in Ukraine, Belarus, and other places that Germans occupied. Here you could see the killing site the way it looks right now. Actually, now they've changed this monument. It looks a little better because it was tilting. It was almost falling at the time. But you could see an interesting thing that here this pavement is broken, right? And basically there are people called black archaeologists, so not a real archaeologist, black ones, meaning they're doing something bad. What they're doing is they try to find some treasures that they think people left, people hid during the war. So they thought that there are some treasures there, so that's why they broke it. We're trying to, with metal detectors, find something. But obviously, they couldn't find anything because people were actually stripped naked and killed here. So it's very sad. story, but there are survivors in the story of survival. So my grandmother was one of the survivors, and my grandfather too. He was in the war in the front, so fighting, but he was taken captive. So he was a POW, a prisoner of war, and he was in actually 4 prisoner of war camps. So it's a separate story of his survival, because he had to hide the fact that he was Jewish, otherwise he would have been killed. So here they are with my mom, born in 1946. So this picture probably was taken about 1947, 48. And here is my grandmother's mother. Her name was Hava, and my mother's name was also Hava or Yeva, which is the same name. It's the same name as Eve, right? The first woman in the Bible, right? So I put this picture because I wanted to show some continuity, even though some people died. So her grandmother died, but part of her lives in my mom. At least she bears her name, right? And there were 7 children in my grandmother's family. She was one of 7. And here are her 2 brothers who survived because they were at the front. They were fighting in the wars, and they happened to survive. 3 out of 7. And I would like to show you my grandma now. I mean, now, unfortunately, she's not with us anymore. She died about 8 years ago in the summer of 2012 at the age of 89. That's what she looked like about a year before she died. And she was a very lovely person, very kind, liked to tell stories and liked to talk about that experience of that time, although it was painful. I know that many people say that their parents, grandparents didn't like to talk about it, but in my family, actually, both my grandmother and grandfather did talk a lot about it. That's why, fortunately, I know a lot about the story and would like to share with others. And here you'll hear a short clip when my grandmother is singing a song in Yiddish. That's the language that Jewish people spoke at the time. It's similar to German. And here is the song about Friday night. So as you might know, Friday night and Saturday is a holiday for the Jewish people. They gather around the table, sing songs, eat. So that's the song that my grandmother sang about.
Эта песня пел мой папа.
In the beginning, she says in Russian that her father sang this song.
Freitag, kalder Nacht, ist doch jeder jeder Meile, in jeder Winkel lacht, in Stiebele ist doch Tacke freilich. Sie da langt da Stückele Fisch, wo sie hat allein mit ihr gemacht. Sie habt da Kisch in den Pisk, weiß es doch Freitag auf der Nacht. Все.
All right. That's the story of my grandmother's family. Sad and happy at the same time. Sad because of the losses and happy because of survival. She had a daughter, 2 grandchildren, one of them. And I would like to tell you that it's very important to preserve your family history. And you have grandparents, grandparents who you could talk to and find out about their lives. Maybe record it, write it down, or record it on video. So then you could share with your children, grandchildren, and that's how our history continues. So thank you very much for listening.